Hi, Ken.
Hi.
Hi, I'm so grateful. Thank you so much for the opportunity to talk with you. You are an intellectual hero of mine.
Great.
And a patron saint of much of my life's work, so
All right.
I'm very grateful to be here.
Wonderful.
Yeah. I'm going to do something that I think might be a little different than your traditional interviews. I'm actually
Whatever you want.
not going to ask you about integral theory. What I was hoping to ask you about was for your feedback on some of my current and upcoming projects as an integrally inspired producer. So what I was hoping that we could do is I'm going to share 3 or 4 projects, depending on what we have time for, and then just ask you some questions about them and
Sure.
hear your thoughts about them. So I'm going to start with a project that is called the anti-debate.
Okay.
Anti-debate. So, well, zooming out, we might ask, what would it look like if a debate assumed not that one person was right and the other was wrong, but that they were each holding different parts of the same bigger picture?
Right.
So the anti-debate is one humble answer to that question. It's a new format for debate where participants build on each other's insights so that greater complexity can emerge.
Right.
So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the format, and then I would just love to hear what you think and what you might do differently with the format.
Okay.
The format is very simple. It actually starts out like a traditional debate with opening statements and rebuttals, but then the difference is it doesn't stop there, right? It keeps going. So it's like, thank you for clarifying your different perspectives. Now that you've put your ingredients on the table, it's time to make something new. So phase 1 is debate. Phase 2 is where we actually try to do some integration of the different perspectives. And then phase 3 is people sharing what they learned, how their view expanded, if at all. Very simply, phase 1, debate. Phase 2, integration. Phase 3, what did we learn? Phase 2 is what I would love to ask you about, because obviously the question comes up, how do you help people integrate their different perspectives?
Right.
What kind of a process would you actually guide them through? What I do is very, very simple. There's 3 steps. Step 1 is I have them steel man each other. Step 2 is I have them red team themselves. So steel manning is seeing the strength in the other person's position. Red teaming is about seeing the weakness of your own.
Right.
So they ask themselves the question, what would it take to change my view? So now they've seen the strengths in the other, they've kind of seen the weakness in their own, and then I guide them in some kind of open-ended synthesis seeking with a couple of questions. The first question is there an either or that can be flipped to a both and? The second one is there an opportunity to move from what is right, X or Y, to under what circumstances is X or Y useful or helpful? And then the third question is, are there perverse incentives that are making this issue harder to resolve? Are there like things happening upstream in
Right.
the economic or political context? So that's what I do in phase 2. I know that was a lot to throw at you, but I'm just going to ask you, like, what might you do during phase 2 to help people integrate their different perspectives?
Right. One of the things I was struck by was when you asked them, what's the weakest part of your argument?
Yes.
Some people will have trouble doing that because the general idea is that both of them are arguing a truth, a partial truth.
Yes.
And that might be all they can think of about their approach, that it's a partial truth.
Yeah.
And so when they have to think of how it's wrong, nothing will really come up. So you should just be aware of that.
Yes.
And is there an either or that can be converted to both and? That's fine. And that will help them move towards some sort of integration. If there is, well, of course, there's some sort of integration possible, but that would help them move in that direction.
Yeah.
So I like that part.
Yeah. Is there just in general in your own process of, I mean, I know for you, when you did this process of integration, you sat in a room with like 27 legal pads and
Right.
like thinking through things for years.
Right.
So how would you make that process doable in a shorter amount of time, for people? Yeah.
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 Well, the whole point about the integral model is that it busts down either 4 or 8 different views that all of reality can be gathered into.
Uh-huh.
And so the assumption is you can take any 2 views and they will fit into either one of the 4 quadrants or one of the 8 zones. And that's still true.
Yeah.
So they have to be aware of what the 4 quadrants are.
Yes.
And it would also help if they knew what the 8 zones
Yes.
were. And with that, they can then go looking for what of their idea fits what quadrant or what zone.
Yeah.
And that will give, when they see, like for example, okay, I'm talking just about the upper left quadrant.
Yeah.
Then they'll see 3 other quadrants
Yes.
that they are
Missing.
ignoring.
Totally. Yeah.
And that it'll be pretty obvious to them that they're not talking about, if they're talking about the interior of their
Right.
own mind, they're not talking about their brains.
Yes.
And then they can decide, well, is what I'm saying, does it apply to any of these other
Right.
areas?
Right.
They can be assured that if they can recognize how their view fits in the other quadrants,
Yeah.
they can also be assured that some part of their view is including some part of the other quadrants.
Right. Right.
So they can use that as a way to integrate what
Yes.
they're saying
Yeah.
with all of these different views
Yeah.
that cover all of reality.
Yeah, I mean, you're making me think it might even be worth introducing the quadrants to them either before the anti-debate or during it.
Right.
And then have them kind of see that, and then see if they can kind of fill it out together with
Right.
what they're each bringing to the table.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And hopefully they will have read some of this stuff anyway.
Yeah.
So-
Right. Another question is, so I have been playing with having them make something together.
Make something?
Make something together, like at the end of phase 2. It could be something as simple as just a 1-sentence articulation of the synthesis, or it could be something more complex, like filling out some kind of a matrix together, like
Right.
under what circumstances does your position apply versus does mine apply, and then we have kind of but you've created so many things. You've created so many diagrams and frameworks. And,
Right.
and what advice would you give to me in guiding people to create something together that is some kind of articulation of their integration?
Well, again, they should know the framework.
Yeah.
So they should understand each of the 4 quadrants.
Yeah.
And once they get a handle on what the 4 quadrants are, they're very easy to
Yeah.
use. It's just the inside and the outside
Yeah.
of an individual and a collective.
Yes.
And then people can
Everybody
think
understands
of,
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not hard to think of examples
Yeah.
of each of
Yeah.
those. So they'll have that laid out in their mind.
Yeah. It depends.
So
but-
the more, if they want to get a huge synthesis, they're going to want to add some description of how what they're thinking about fits in
Yeah.
the other quadrants, or
Yeah.
at least more of them. If they're coming just from the upper left,
Right.
then how does it fit in the upper right?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah, they could just fill out a 4-quadrant diagram.
That's
with,
right.
Yeah, that could be the output. That
Yeah.
could be an output. Yeah.
Right.
One last question on the anti-debate. Right now, I'm doing anti-debates on all kinds of topics, from gender-affirming care to God to AI governance to the billionaire tax. I mean, the people who've participated, you probably know of some of them if you know Michael Shermer.
Yeah.
and Destiny,
Yeah.
and Douglas Rushkoff, William
Yeah.
McCaskill. So people are participating. Are there specific topics or people who you would love to see engage in this kind of a practice?
Well, none of those people that you mentioned are very integral.
I know, that's why I'm getting them into this. This is like my Trojan horse.
Yes. Well,
Yeah.
it's going to take them a bit of accommodating.
But if I make them fill out a quadrant diagram, then they'll have to do it.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, which topic would I advise?
What would you love to see, either topic or people? Yeah.
Well, I think gender is always fun.
Yeah.
And it's fairly sensitive topic, so that makes it cool.
Yes.
Because there's so many ways they can screw it up and get
Yeah.
crucified by the
Yeah.
media or whatever.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's always fun.
I agree. Yeah.
And then I would just use any of the sort of major dualisms that Western philosophy has come up with.
Oh, yeah.
Like mind and body.
Yes.
Or individual and collective.
Yes.
Right and wrong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, rights and responsibility, or freedom and
Right.
justice.
That's right.
Yeah. Great.
And any of those types, you'll think of a dozen on your way home.
Yeah.
But like there's no duality that can't be brought into some sort of semi-unity using 4 quadrants or 8 zones.
Mm-hmm.
And if not that, then one of the different levels.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if we use Gebser's terms, archaic, magic, mythic, rational, pluralistic, and integral.
Uh-huh.
The mythic worldview, for example, presents things that you find like in the Bible, like Christ was born of a biological virgin.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, do you believe that? No. That's what we call a mythic truth.
Yeah.
And rationality comes along and denies that. So if you're trying to integrate biblical truths with rationality, then you'll want to specifically mention the levels of development and say, Jesus Christ, for example, is a mythic, literal truth. We also call it a biblical truth.
Mm-hmm.
And denying those biblical truths is what we call rational truth or logical truth.
Yeah.
And so, but using quadrants or levels or lines or states or types, you can bring together any apparently conflicting opposites.
Yeah.
And that's an important fact.
And worth doing in the public
Yeah.
sphere.
Right.
Cool. Okay, I'm going to move on to another project. So this is an upcoming project. You're familiar with the term the meta-crisis.
The
Meta-crisis.
of course.
Okay. So basically, there are like how many long-form podcast conversations about the like multi-hour podcast conversations, but there's not yet just a clear, concise, and compelling explanation for a mainstream audience. So I am taking it upon myself to make a very simple, just a meta-crisis explainer video, like 10 to 15 minutes explanation. And I can say more about what I'm envisioning, but I'd rather just ask you, and this might be a very big question, but how do you think about explaining or understanding what the meta-crisis is in an integral way?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that you want to do if you're going to explain the meta-crisis from an integral view is you have to explain the integral view.
Yeah.
So you can say things like, have you ever noticed that the way we interpret our reality depends on several fundamental categories? We can talk about an individual thing, or we can talk about a collective thing. we can talk about an interior reality, we can talk about an exterior reality, and all of those intertwine.
Mm-hmm.
So when we talk about the meta-crisis, integral theory maintains that the meta-crisis comes because we don't take all of these accounts into our mind
Yes.
as we're trying to think about them.
Yes, and measure things and value things and et cetera.
Right.
Yeah.
And because nobody takes them into account, we have a meta-crisis, a very widespread collective crisis.
Mm-hmm.
So we mentioned individual and collective
Yeah.
and interior and exterior.
Yeah.
So these divide up into 4 boxes, which we call 4 quadrants.
Yeah.
So what is an example of an individual looked at from an interior? Well, that could be my mind, my thoughts, my feelings, anything that I can see by looking within or introspecting. And what does it look like from an exterior view? Well, from an exterior view, it would look like what a surgeon might see as he started cutting into. So we won't see the mind, but we will see the brain.
Mm-hmm.
And notice that mind and brain are not similar. They are really different quadrants.
Yeah.
The reason is we can actually see the brain. If you want, just cut open somebody's skull, lift the top off, and you'll see the brain.
Yeah.
It looks like a crumpled grapefruit.
Yeah.
Now, what does my mind look like? Well, it doesn't look like a crumpled grapefruit. No. I mean, it's got all sort of images and different colors and different grammars and just all sorts of different stuff.
Yeah.
But it doesn't look like a crumpled grapefruit.
Yeah.
So we have mind and we have brain, and then we have individual and we have collective.
Just to bring it, like, how do you understand what the meta-crisis is? How would you explain what the meta-crisis is?
An inability to think integrally.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's just that simple. Yeah.
Wow. I take a lot of my kind of understanding of the meta-crisis from the work of Daniel Schmachtenberger and his team. And I'm curious they don't talk about the interior, really.
Well, and that's one of the problems with them.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, to the extent that you feel like you know his assessment of the meta-crisis or you're familiar with it, what do you think he gets right, let's say, and what do you think his assessment is kind of missing?
Well, he understands that there's conflicts between various aspects of reality. That's one of the positive things. One of the negative things is he doesn't have any clue how the interior adds to this conflict. You can't generate the conflict without an interior component. I don't know why he doesn't use interior. So I've talked with him, and he's talked that he really likes my stuff.
Yeah.
But he apparently isn't really paying attention to it that well because of his lack of fully understanding and clearly including the interior.
Yeah, I wonder. I have heard him talk about it. I don't know why it doesn't seem to show up in the work that comes out of the Civilization Research Institute. Because obviously Zach, he works very closely with Zach too.
Yeah,
so,
I should talk with him about it.
Yeah, I think that would be a huge benefit for all of us who follow, your work, and for you two to have this conversation. I would love that. I personally would really, really love that.
Great.
I guess is there, before I move on to the next project, is there anything else you would say about how to explain what the meta-crisis is in a way that a more mainstream audience could understand?
Well, as I said, it's a lack of thinking integral.
Yeah, that's such a simple
and that generates the meta-crisis.
Yeah, cool. I hope I have something to show you within the next couple of months. The next project I wanted to ask you about is it will also be a film that I want to tell the story of the evolution of the masculine-feminine polarity from its origins, 1 billion years ago in eukaryotic bacteria, like through plants and animals, like through our many human dramas, and then to a, Rian Eisler calls it partnerist, or we could call it integral, post-tragic future where the masculine and feminine are more creative and more powerful together. I guess the first question is, this is kind of a big question, but how would you tell the story of the patriarchy in the West? Like what are feminists getting right, and then what are they getting wrong?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, again, the meta crisis, as it involves gender, comes from not thinking integrally. And how do we think integrally when we think about gender? One of the great difficulties is, and I've noticed that feminists are sort of slowly changing their own tune about this, is how do we, if you have to create a list of something called masculine and a list called feminine, what would you put in each list?
Uh-huh.
Now, early feminists said there's no difference.
Right.
The masculine list and the feminine list are the same.
Right.
But then they started thinking about it, and they got a lot of criticism for that. And they've started kind of trying to come up with, okay, this is maybe more feminine, and this is maybe a little bit more masculine. And they of course have, but they're woven and all of that. But here's what I would put in the masculine list, and here's what I put in the feminine list. And as those lists become clearer of what both sides agree belong in these different lists, then that's starting to clear up the argument between feminists and the rest of the world.
Yeah.
But it's still burdened by the initial denying of these lists.
Yeah.
And feminists still take it very suspiciously when they see somebody say, this is masculine. They'll go, hey, women can do that too.
Yeah.
You go, all right.
Yeah, I think of it as two overlapping bell curves.
Yeah.
And the left is guilty of trying to pretend that they're the same bell curve, and the right is guilty of trying to force us under the normal part of the curve and pretend that there's no outliers. But it's two different curves. They have an overlap, but they're different curves. Yeah.
That's a good way to look at it.
Yeah.
But that's how I would explain it.
Yeah.
And it's really important getting this masculine and feminine issue correct. Simply because you can't explain the patriarchy without it, for example. Like it's more or less agreed that men are more aggressive than women.
Yeah.
So men, at least historically, have been more associated with things like discovering science. And building things, creating cities.
Rockets that go into outer space. Yeah.
And so even feminists would agree, well, we can't call toxic masculinity as if masculine and toxic are the same. That's just not correct. And it's also an insult to men at the same time, which presumably we don't want to do, although the early feminists did clearly want to do that. But we don't want to do that. That's not nice. It's also not accurate. But virtually all cultures, and the early feminists who write about this, are patriarchies, because they select for the male aggressive tendency. And they're really, men are, going to be out there, and they're going to be hunting and gathering and all of that.
That's what we needed to do.
And even most feminists don't want men to stop doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So when we get that column figured out, we're going to know the things that patriarchy is good for, and even feminists want it. And we're not going to simply label all patriarchy as bad, which is the early feminists all did.
Yeah.
And that's just categorically, that's a good way to not understand humanity at all. Because you're just going to label half of it as being corrupt and criminal and sadistic and mean-spirited and all that. No, they're just being aggression-driven in a fairly benign sense. They're being more scientific or more discoveries, or they're building cities or skyscrapers or stuff like that. And if you actually go outside and look around at all the things that are created, the patriarchy has built many of those, if not most of them. They built most of the houses, you see. They built the electrical systems. They built skyscrapers. And there are some jobs that even feminists don't complain about. Like you always hear feminists saying, well, there are no women in, like, doctors.
Right.
But that's not true anymore. There are more women doctors than there are men. So to heck with that. But I've never heard any feminists complain that there are fewer roof builders.
Right, of course.
In women. Who? No, women don't give a shit about tacking roof tiles down.
Or if they can help it, they would just rather not do that.
That's right.
So just to reflect back to you, would you say that it's not that the patriarchy, it's not that men have been dominating women, it's that the conditions kind of selected for skills and capacities that were more masculine in order to kind of evolve as a civilization in the direction that we have.
That's a good way to put it, and that's exactly right. When we get that column figured out, there are at least some things that men have more of, and aggression
then how would you articulate where we need to go? Like, what's next? Like, if it's not patriarchy and it's not matriarchy, I mean, Riane Eisler talks about partnerism. I don't know what you think of her kind of ideas, but like, how would you... Riane Eisler, she's a...
I know.
Yeah, she's... yeah, well, I would be curious how you would, whether using her ideas or other ideas, like how would you describe like what needs to be next as far as assuming that it's time to move into something new, which maybe is not an assumption that you share, but...
Like what's masculine and what's feminine?
Well, like if I mean, we have been selecting for, let's say we have been selecting for masculine traits, but it seems like we could really use some feminine energy. So how would you describe, well, so here, I'll give you a very specific example. I really struggled with the movie Barbie, right? Because it just ping-pongs between matriarchy and patriarchy. Did you see this movie?
No.
Okay.
Because of that, I knew that's right, and I knew I couldn't stand.
It's like you think of the millions of dollars that were spent making this film. They could have spent a little bit articulating a vision of a society where men and women can be more happy together. But yeah, how would you, like, and actually that's something I'm considering doing in this film, is just remaking the end of that movie. So
well, that's a good idea.
Yeah, how would you think about what a healthy, relationship between men and women or masculine and feminine looks like? Yeah.
Well, if we look at things that are fairly well agreed to now, like men are more aggressive and females are more mothering. So they have generally on scales of masculine and feminine traits, feminine will have more agreeability.
Yeah.
And that's actually, if you talk to counselors, a lot of the women they see will want to get ahead in their job. And they're not getting as many pay raises as men are because men are more aggressive.
Yeah.
And they'll go in and go, hey, I want to get paid.
Yeah.
And so they get paid. And what women are taught to be is more aggressive in asking for pay.
Yeah.
And so, but in the meantime, even the courts continue to implicitly believe that women are more caring, more mothering, more compassionate. So in divorces, who do judges give the kids to?
Yeah, to the moms.
Almost like 80% go to women.
Yeah.
And men are, men's groups are infuriated by that because they love their children just as much, or so they say. And they want to know why they can't get them on occasion. But the courts are really adamant that no, the mother is the mothering one. We're going to give it to them. And what makes it so difficult is there's some truth to that.
Yeah.
And judges realize that if they give the kids to the mother, she's going to, on balance, take care of the kids better than the male will.
Yeah.
Because if nothing else, the male just isn't that good a cook or just something, but he's not going to take as good a care of the kids as the mother, the real mother, would.
Right.
So I sort of run down that kind of list when you ask me what should be done next. What I'm looking for are feminist-oriented women that are willing to stand behind the general agreements that we already have. Like most feminists agree that men are more aggressive, although by aggressive they usually mean mean, but okay. And they'll agree that, okay, mothers are more mothering or caring or something like that. But they can just start going down the list of masculine and feminine traits.
Yeah.
And instead of like the first time they went down it, when they just said, oh, there are no differences. I mean, women can do everything men can. Well, we don't quite agree with that anymore. And biologically, it's just not true.
Yeah. What if we were kind of like fully unleashing and expressing like the best of masculine and feminine, what would we see differently in the world? What would we see differently in our political leadership, if anything, or in our boardrooms, or would it be more about kind of like revaluing the private sphere? Or what would we see differently if we were fully honoring the masculine and the feminine?
Well, first of all, women can still do anything they want. That's the whole gist of equality laws. So if a woman wants to apply for a roofing job, she's more than welcome to do that. She might not get the job,
and
but
she might not like it.
certainly can apply for it. And men can apply, and divorcing men do apply to get custody of the children, and they can always seek to get custody, even though they might not get it. But that's just the way it goes.
What do you think would happen if feminists agreed, if there was agreement?
Well, I think for one thing, we would stop using terms like toxic masculinity, which for the early feminists is a single phrase, and it has one meaning, and terms always go together. Wherever you find masculinity, you find toxic. And that's just the way it is. And that would stop, and that's got to stop. I mean, that's no way to make friends with somebody. I'm going to define you, my friend, as a toxic asshole. that's off to a really bad start.
Yeah.
And that's no way to build a relationship between two different entities. It's to label one of them as an inherently oppressive bastard.
Yeah.
That's just not sensible at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
So by having feminists come out with, okay, we agree these are feminine and these are masculine, although both can be both. And
they overlap.
And you've got the double hump and all that. That would allow the conversation to go forward. And what we find is that because of male biological aggressiveness, men did build a lot of those things. They built the towns, they built the walls, they built the skyscrapers.
They fought the wars.
They put roofs on all of them. And the women didn't complain about any of that. And the women basically took care of the family, raised the kids, and so on. And that's the essential form of civilization the world over. It sort of grew up with what we would call sort of the biological givens of masculine and feminine sort of rule, because we were more biology than we were mental. As we started getting more mental, we started looking at, well, and the feminists were pioneers in this, who started looking at, well, are women really equal in this thing we call civilization? Because when we look at it, all we see are men. We go, well, yeah, because you're looking at the stuff that the men built. So I guess it's going to be more men. But that's the kind of stuff that just has to stop. And when I say they're not thinking integrally, they're not. They're not looking at, okay, what belongs in each slot and how can we include both of them. But I would start to see a thinking integrally about gender would be, first, let's try to decide just what these two columns are. Because that's what we're arguing about.
I think there's two pieces. I think there's deciding what the columns are and also properly valuing both of them. Because we have been valuing the public sphere and not the private sphere, except for the fact that we need. We need.
That's right.
we desperately need to tend to both.
That's right.
Cool. Okay, I'm going to move on to one last project. This is fun. Thank you for going along with all of this. So, do you know what a killer app is?
Sure.
Okay. So, I think that the killer app for Integral
is news.
Is the news, yes. So, it's so often that people ask me where to get news, because it's so partisan, or it only gives you this kind of very myopic understanding. And I feel like Integral could do so much to help news be so much better. And ultimately to help people become wiser interpreters of reality through the news. So I guess just the first question I would ask is, I have a few questions, but the first one is just, what do you think of news as a way to bring Integral?
Well, I think it's a great idea, and it seems to have a sort of semi-major problem. The great idea, when I was always asked, where do we need to get Integral out first, I'd usually say education. Because, first of all, you have to learn what Integral means. Even though you're using all of its components all the time, you have no idea you're doing that. So, of course, you're not thinking integrally, because you're not even aware of Integral. And that always was a problem, because they would say, well, which grades? And I'd say, well, I just start at the second or third or fourth grade and just start introducing some of the simpler terms, and then you get more complex as you went along. And that translates nicely into news.
Uh-huh.
If we could get it into news easily, I might even say news would probably be either as good or even slightly better than education.
Uh-huh.
But we've got a problem with news,
Uh-huh.
which is most Americans get their news from one of the major TV channels, and it's about 30 minutes long.
Yeah.
And they never use a preordained framework to put the news in.
Yeah.
And you have to learn the framework
Yeah.
before you can know what the news means.
Right.
And that's the problem with integral.
Yeah.
You do have to say what quadrants
Yeah.
are.
Yeah.
At least say, well, individual and collective and
Yeah.
inside and outside.
Yeah.
And I just can't think that would be a great idea
Uh-huh.
on the typical news the way we get it.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, I do think that I think you could also just do the news integrally without. You could just tell stories where you actually cover the you tell them, or you tell stories using a developmental lens without saying developmental lens, and then when people notice that your news is so much more informative than anybody else's, then
Right.
they can ask, what are you using?
Right.
And then you can say, well, let me tell you what I'm using.
well,
Yeah.
those news organizations that still exist
Yeah.
after they've tossed out news interpreted according to the integral framework,
Yeah.
most of them I think would fail.
Really?
Yeah, it would just take, how long would it take for somebody to actually educate themselves and say, oh, wait, that's seems like much better news, but I'm not quite sure because I really don't know what you mean.
Well,
But-
I think the Daily Evolver is like as close as we've gotten. Do you remember the Daily Evolver? It was Jeff Salzman's podcast.
Salzman?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was just an integral take on current events.
Right.
And it was excellent. And
Right.
he wasn't like every time explaining the quadrants, or he would just talk about current events, but using his integral understanding. And it was so good.
Right.
So I think it can actually be maybe as simple as that. And then let people ask, like, what's behind the curtain?
Right.
And once people are asking what's behind the curtain, well, then, all of this is behind the curtain. So, yeah.
Well, hopefully that would be true. And I would love to see that.
Yeah.
I think it would be great.
I would love to see
And
that too.
you're right, Salzman did a pretty good job.
Yeah. What would you, in terms of like how to do the news integrally, there are some obvious kind of, like having correspondence with different perspectives, and that
Right.
they're like representing different perspectives and integrating them. There's the developmental lens, which for so many situations, like Israel, you cannot understand it without a developmental lens.
Yeah, it's basically, when I first started working with the integral framework, I basically only understood two types of wholeness, which are called waking up and growing up.
Ken, I'm curious, what do you wish were different about the news that you watch and
I
listen
wish
to?
it was more integral.
What would that look like?
I have questions about whether it would work because you'd have this framework.
Yeah.
But you point out Salzman could do it. So,
Yeah.
okay, I'll buy maybe it could happen.
Yeah.
Now, there are sort of not quite real news commentators, but people that talk about the news a lot, so-called public intellectuals,
Right.
like Jordan Peterson.
Yeah.
And who's Peterson's friend?
Douglas Murray.
Right,
Oh,
right.
yeah.
And I saw the two of them arguing.
Yeah.
And the only reason I bring them up is that both of them, there's a good chance that both of them have read one or more of my books.
Yeah.
But what I noticed is Murray,
Yeah.
he believed in what I call logical truth,
Yeah.
which is believes in strict logic and the laws of logic, like the law of identity, A equals A, or the law of the excluded middle. A thing is A or B, but it can't be both,
Yeah.
and so on. And he would spout out some logical truth. And Jordan Peterson, who is very much into literature and is actually given courses on the Bible,
Yes.
stuff like that, he would respond and say, no, that's too logical, or that's you're being too rational, or something like that. And he might spout out some biblical truth. Jesus Christ was born to save all of our sins. And those are all myths.
Yeah.
Being dead and resurrected, that's a mythic truth.
Yeah.
And as soon as they finished, I got up, sat down at my computer, and wrote types of truth for the headline. And then I wrote 14 different types of truth. And they're all true, but within what they consider truth.
Yeah.
So, for example, it's a literary truth that the address of Sherlock Holmes is 22B1 Baker Street.
Yeah.
And that's true. That's
Yeah.
a literary truth. That is his real address
Yeah.
in the
Book.
literature.
Yeah.
So when I had all these 14, which took me like 2 or 3 pages, I actually started thinking, well, that's actually a pretty good idea for a book. So I sat down and started writing out a book for him. And I'm about halfway through it. And by the way, I mostly write books in my head. And so when it comes time for me to write them down, I'm really just transcribing them. And so it only takes me like 2 to 3 weeks to write a book.
Wow.
Because I've written it in my head already, and I'm just copying it. But that's the kind of news like I would like to see.
With multiple types of truth.
Right.
Yeah.
And
that would be cool.
And sometimes it would actually refer to the theory behind it as integral theory.
Yeah.
So that the people that have realized this is a cool kind of news would start looking, and the ones that would start looking would hear integral. And
I actually think, for what it's worth, I mean, I think this could manifest many ways. I could try to create a new show and or try to do consulting for existing news shows, but I do think, I'm curious if you, I think actually Barry Weiss is very well positioned right now to do something integral.
Barry White?
Barry Weiss, the woman who took over CBS.
Right.
Yeah, she was a New York Times refugee and started the Free Press, and now is sitting on top of
or
CBS.
Or we put Salzman in charge of it.
Yeah, that would be perfect.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm sure he'd like to.
Yeah. I'm going to see him tomorrow, actually.
Yeah.
I'll tell him he said that.
Good.
So I guess, yeah, before we kind of open up to more kind of general questions, we've just talked about a couple different projects. We talked about the anti-debate, we talked about the meta-crisis explainer, the film about the masculine-feminine polarity, the evolution of the masculine-feminine polarity, and the news. Is there anything else on any of those projects or that is coming to mind that you want to share before we open up to more general questions?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The first more kind of general question that I would ask you is, as an integrally inspired producer and creator, how can I best carry the legacy of your work? Like, what would you love to see people like me create?
Well, as you extend into things like news and start exploring ways to give an integral news account, I think those are terrific. Any of the ways that you can create that use an integral approach, and they don't necessarily identify it, except on occasion you might mention it so people can look it up if they want to.
Yes.
but just any informative use of it that you want to do is probably, I would think, the best way to do it. And you're in a position, you know a fair number of people, you've been around,
Yeah.
you've produced a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
So you could keep going,
Yeah.
tell it integrally.
Yes. Yeah. That's what I've been trying to do.
Great.
And integral is all over the references, right? So when people say, "What is this? How are you doing this?" then it's all findable. It's all accessible.
Well, that's great.
Yeah. I guess this is not related to my work, but there's something that I've wondered for a long time around evolution and, like, is it possible for us to keep evolving when, like, how much of a delta can there be? Like, is it possible for the leading edge to keep evolving when a lot of people, or maybe like a majority of people, are still kind of stuck?
Are you talking about human evolution?
Yeah. Like, is it possible for the leading edge of humanity to keep evolving when a majority of people are still at lower stages? Like, must we not kind of bring people along in order for us to kind of keep growing?
Right.
Growing up, waking up, showing up, cleaning up.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, the encouraging fact is that a fair number of people have been asking that question.
Uh-huh.
Like, as much as that difference is right now,
Yeah.
do we really feel that? I mean, is it something that is oppressing all of us?
Uh-huh.
Is the fact that we have a large leading edge up here and a lot of people down here, is that actually slowing these people down?
Yeah, or slowing the people at the top down.
That's right.
Yeah. You don't think so?
I don't think so. As long as we keep it in mind
Yeah.
and keep working on social systems that are aware of that
Yeah.
and actually sort of work in some ways to overcome it.
Uh-huh.
It bothers people, and that's the important fact.
Okay. Yeah, but in and of itself, it doesn't inherently prevent
I don't
growth.
I don't think so.
Or increases in wholeness.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't think so.
Yeah.
So I think we're okay.
Okay. I mean, yeah, I guess maybe we'll end with any parting hopes for the integral movement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd like to see it get into education or on the news.
Me too.
I'll take either one of those.
Yeah.
No, seriously, I would like to see some sort of dissemination
Yeah.
of the ideas that are contained within it. But I am at least fairly convinced by your argument that we could do a news, especially with somebody like Salzman.
Yeah.
Because I agree with you. He did an amazing job
Yeah.
with his radio show.
Yeah. I agree too.
So
Yeah.
that would be cool.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'm on it. All right, well, this has been so lovely. Thank you so much,
Certainly.
Ken, for your extraordinary work
Certainly.
and for your time. This has been such a joy to get to talk through projects with you.
Great.
I'm going to use everything you told me.
Right.
Yeah, and as things come out, I can share them with you.
Cool.
Yeah.